Grace Buckingham's storyline is one of those soap opera cases where desperation, family loyalty, and sloppy writing all collide into a messy storm. On the surface, her actions can be chalked up to fear of the violent men coming after Reese's debts, fear of her daughters being harmed, and fear of losing control of her life. When people are terrified, they often make rash decisions, and in soaps, those rash decisions are usually explosive. But when viewers step back and look at what she actually did, the cracks become hard to ignore. Grace didn't just make a questionable decision, she made one of the most extreme, career-ending choices possible. By faking a brain tumor diagnosis for Liam Spencer, she didn't just cross a moral line, she detonated it. This wasn't a small lie or a short-term con, it was an elaborate deception involving life-and-death stakes. She played on Liam's fears of mortality, used her medical authority to back it up, and ultimately pulled in Bill Spencer's financial resources to make it look legitimate. For $1 million, she risked not just her job as a doctor but her entire future. Once the truth surfaced, her fate was sealed: legal jeopardy, professional ruin, and a devastated family. This is where the frustration comes in. Grace supposedly made this move to protect her daughters from bookies, but why ignore the most obvious, safest, and more believable option? Paris wasn't just single and struggling, she was engaged to Thomas Forrester. That engagement tied her to one of the most powerful families in Los Angeles. The Forresters aren't just wealthy, they're deeply connected, resourceful, and known for protecting their own. If Grace had gone to Thomas and explained the danger, he could have turned to Ridge, Eric, or even Brooke for help. Money could have been raised, protection could have been arranged, and the problem could have been solved without committing fraud and risking everything. Thomas himself is a man who operates with fierce loyalty when it comes to the people he loves. His track record shows that he can and will go to extremes to safeguard family and romantic partners. With Paris being his fiancée, the idea that he wouldn't step up, or that Grace wouldn't even think to ask, is nonsensical. Fans immediately latched onto this as a glaring oversight, calling it not just a mistake but a hole so large it undermines the realism of the whole arc. The truth, however, has less to do with Grace's character and more to do with the mechanics of storytelling. Soaps, at their core, are driven by drama, not logic. The writers wanted a story centered around Liam's terror and Bill's financial might. That was the narrative engine: Grace as the desperate schemer, Liam as the victim, Bill as the financial savior. If Thomas had entered the picture, that entire setup would have collapsed. His presence would have provided a believable, immediate solution, and there would be no tumor scam story to tell. There's also the issue of actor availability. Thomas wasn't on the canvas during this storyline. Bringing him back just to hand Grace money or neutralize the bookie threat would have shifted focus away from the drama the show wanted to milk. So, the writers effectively erased him from Grace's thought process. To the audience, that looks absurd. Grace acts as if Thomas doesn't exist, even though his relationship with Paris should have made him her natural first call. But from the writer's perspective, he simply couldn't be part of the story, so they wrote around him, hoping fans would overlook it. Soap audiences, however, rarely overlook these things. Viewers invest in continuity, in character consistency, and in relationships being acknowledged. When a mother ignores her daughter's fiancé, who happens to be rich and protective, and instead invents $1 million scam that risks everything, the suspension of disbelief breaks. Fans vented about it online because it makes Grace look less like a woman making a desperate but rational choice and more like a puppet of the writer's agenda. At its core, this plot hole is a reminder of the constant balancing act in soap writing. On one side, there's the need for heightened, dramatic storytelling that keeps viewers hooked. On the other, there's the need for logic, continuity, and believable character behavior. In this case, the writers tipped the scale heavily toward drama, leaving realism behind. Grace's decision to scam Bill and Liam gave the show fireworks but sacrificed credibility. For fans, that trade-off can be frustrating because it undermines the emotional investment they've made in the characters. Why build up Paris and Thomas as a couple if his presence doesn't matter in moments of crisis? Why spend years on the Forrester family's wealth and influence if it's ignored when it would make the most sense to use it? These are the kinds of questions viewers ask when the plot hole is so glaring it overshadows the story being told. In the end, Grace's actions don't hold up under scrutiny. The writers clearly wanted a specific story and bent character logic to make it happen. That doesn't erase the entertainment value. The scam was dramatic, shocking, and set up plenty of fallout, but it does leave a permanent gap in the narrative. For many fans, that gap is bigger than